Hello, everybody. Welcome to Reddit Roast number 27, I think we are. Mal, good to see you again.
Good to see you.
We've got a bunch of really unique stories today. A couple of really interesting ones, a couple of less unique ones that we can also talk about that make up the vast majority of applications, a lot of the sort of same common stories. So we'll touch on them. I think a couple of them that are interesting. We've got two big four consultants. We see these people all the time, right? Big four consulting, looking to do an MBA. So we're going to talk about a couple of big four consulting profiles. We've got a Canadian gamer who's looking to pivot to investment banking. It's really interesting. I think he might be biting off more than he can chew with that, but we will see. We've got somebody bailing on law school to pursue an MBA, also something not uncommon. And we've got a really interesting decision. Somebody who's looking to walk away from sponsorship at their company. Company's paid for the MBA, and they're thinking about walking away from that sponsorship to go and pursue a different role at an MBB. Super interesting dilemma there. Right, let's dive into profile one, shall we, Mel?
Yes, we shall. Profile one, chances evaluation. Getting right into it, 25 male Southeast Asian, Big Four consultant, wants to get into US MBB after their MBA, 3.85 GPA, 655 GMAT, CPA plus FRM, some certifications there as well. So long-time lurker on the sub, hello.
Hello.
Is applying in round 1, 2026. Some background there for work experience, 3 years of work experience at a Big Four in financial risk consulting, promoted to senior, currently leading project teams for clients across Southeast Asia.
Yep.
Academics, GPA 3.85 in finance from their home country. Achievements, multiple scholarships there as well, 2 research papers in cogent science. GMAT score 655, they are studying hard for a retake. Certifications, a few certifications in there, extracurriculars. This is interesting now. Deep interest in East Asian languages and history, studying ancient Chinese scripts and learning
Fair enough.
Japanese, Mandarin, and Korean as well. Demographics, we've covered that. MBA goals, short term to pivot into management consulting at MBB in the US. Long term, still refining, but wants to use the consulting and finance background at a high level.
Okay.
Target schools, currently aspirational, not quite sure on those yet. Dream schools, HBS, GSB, Wharton, Booth, Kellogg, Sloan, Reaches, Columbia, Ross, Fuqua, and Darden. What do you think of the profile of that?
Cool. I mean, basically targeting M7, good as it gets. Right. Let's talk about academic first. So 3.85 in finance, solid GPA, right? 3.6 is the average ballpark for these sort of M7 schools that he's talking about. Number one uni in Southeast Asia. That doesn't do any harm either. But it's not on a, I assume that his GPA, his GPA is not on a 4.0 scale. Therefore, it's not going to get disclosed by the schools to the rankings. Therefore, it carries a little bit less weight. GMAT of 655, which is approximately 700 in the old test. CFA does help. I think we saw a CFA somewhere in here. Yeah, a couple of certifications, particularly the CFA really helps. Some schools even have a box for this, so that's quite nice. In terms of the academics, there was a couple of interesting points as well here about the academic scholarships. That doesn't do any harm. Schools don't really care about your research papers. We can talk about that later, but that's not adding a huge amount. So demographics, Southeast Asia is going to be pretty, let's not say overrepresented, but it's certainly not underrepresented. 25-year-old male is sort of bang on the sweet spot of age. So, fairly neutral on the demographic front. Extracurriculars. I mean, a bit interesting, the deep interest in East Asian languages, studying ancient Chinese scripts, but not much in the way of teamwork involved, I think it's fair to say. I'm not sure how that's going to add much in terms of, your contribution to the MBA. Maybe there's a curiosity story there, for example, for the Harvard Essay 3, but it's an okay extracurricular, not much leadership or teamwork involved. Okay, professional. Oh, not particularly sexy, I think is the polite way to put this. 3 years of experience in the Big Four in financial risk consulting. Mal, stay with me. You awake? You awake? Yeah.
The
It
thing.
could not be more boring in terms of just not adding that much flair to the application.
Hmm.
Promoted. Okay, so promotion certainly helps, and I think um the yeah the I think the work involves advising on risk modeling and process implementation. Not especially glamorous, I think it's fair to say. Okay, goals. And basically, OP is in a non-glamorous role and wants to pivot into a glamorous one, as far as I can tell. Short term, wants to pivot to management consulting at an MBB in the US. So this is a very, very common goal for Big Four applicants. Pivot from Big Four to MBB, fine. The problem is OP doesn't have management consulting experience. In fact, OP has financial risk consulting. So it's not, it's a bit more of a pivot than if they were already doing some sort of management consulting work. In terms of in terms of that goal, look, it's not going to change the world, right? Hey, Harvard, I'm looking to pivot from EY to Bain. What? To consult for like slightly different clients on slightly different subjects. Like it's really not world, it's not knocking anyone's socks off. So a solid profile, nothing particularly stand out. In my mind, it's T15 territory. And we can talk about a bit more about what that looks like.
Okay. OP has a few specific questions as well. So we've seen OP's academic profile. He wants to know, how can I best position this profile to demonstrate my quantitative and academic abilities for top tier programs, considering my current GMAT? And if this ends up being my final score, I would also appreciate feedback on how to approach my applications.
Yeah, I mean,
655.
what quant ability? Sorry, I'm missing something here. Like demonstrate my quant and academic abilities. I'm seeing currently it's a 655 GMAT. We don't know the quant verbal split, but like, I don't know, it's not outstanding already. I don't see exactly where the strong quant he refers to is in there. Maybe the GPA is a bit above average. Fine. Yeah, 3.85 in finance. That's probably what's being referred to. Look, they're going to know, is the short answer. They're going to know. I don't think there's that much more. You might want to, particularly the school doesn't have a box for the CFA, you might want to emphasize that in the optional essay and really say, look, my GMAT does not reflect my academic ability, but I think my CFA does, and I think my 3.85 in a challenging program does. And that's about the end of it. A decent optional essay is about all that can be done here. There's nothing really more. Maybe you want to have your recommender speak to your quant abilities, like working on some particularly quantity subjects or taking on some particularly quantity responsibilities. That wouldn't do any harm. But I think that's it. There's not a huge amount to be done there. They're going to see it, is the short answer.
OP is retaking the GMAT, though. So what would be a good score, do you think, for this?
Well, it's targeting HBS, GSB, Wharton. Realistically, it needs to be above their average, right? Overrepresented, Big Four, pretty boring work experience. It needs to be credible. It needs to be north of 695 or so on the new test to be credible. Combine that with a strong GPA, and the academics are now, very, very solid. I would say that to be really in with a chance with HBS and GSB. Now, listen, back to my point about the not blowing anyone's socks off. Right. I'm a Big Four consultant doing financial risk consulting. To be honest, I think OP should forget about Harvard and Stanford. I really do. I don't see it. There are some M7s that might consider there could be a conversation to be had, but this is such a vanilla profile that there's nearly always something standout in GSB and HBS admits, and I just don't see it. So to be blunt, I would cross those off entirely for now. If in round, like in round 2, maybe you luck out, maybe you get a Wharton admit, maybe there's a question mark over whether you should throw another application in HBS or GSB later. But I think, to be honest, I think Wharton's also quite a big stretch here. So I wouldn't be focusing on those on HBS GSB. I would be focusing on the sort of bottom end of the M7 and the T10, T15s. Does that answer the question? I can't remember exactly what the question was, but hopefully useful.
OP does mention his school list is aspirational, so he does want feedback on the more realistic set. This also comes to his second question. Based on his goal to land a US-based MBB role as an international, are there any specific programs, perhaps in the T15, T25 range, that have an exceptional track record and might particularly value my hands-on international financial consulting experience?
Yeah, this is a very common question. Good question. A very common question that we see a lot. What I'm going to do is reach to our friends at Poets and Quants, who published a while ago this really good article. I guess we can link to this in the comments of the video, of McKinsey's target business school list for its pre-MBA summer experience. Now, this is, you could consider this a proxy for the business schools that have relationships with McKinsey. Now, as you'll see from that list, all of the M7s are there, right? There's the Whartons, there's the Columbias, etc. Yeah. But the non-M7s that are interesting, which I think are relevant for OP, Darden, Ross, Haas, Keenan Flagler, UCLA Anderson, Duke Fuqua, Johnson Cornell, NYU Stern, Dartmouth Tuck, and Yale SOM. So that's a really good proxy for the schools that really are, strong in MBB placements. And it's sort of consistent with what we've seen in terms of our results for our clients, etc. I would strongly, I would focus on the non-M7 schools on that list is where OP should really be looking. And where OP, I think, has a strong chance as well. Like to be positive about this, I say like Harvard, Stanford is unlikely, but the others, the lower end of the M7 and those T10s that have that McKinsey focus, really, really solid. Like Keenan Flagler, absolutely. Fuqua, definitely in with the shot. So I think that's that would be my guidance on schools.
Okay. I think that covers everything we needed to know for OP, and I think OP wanted some tough but honest feedback according to
got it.
Shall we move on?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Profile 2. Better GMAT score than expected. Which schools do I have a realistic chance at now?
Okay.
So OP took the GMAT focus yesterday, scored a 725, which is better than they expected.
Strong.
Originally was targeting Cornell, but now because they had gotten a 675 in their first attempt and the rest of the application felt average, but now thinking bigger with the new score. Looking for some honest thoughts on whether I have a realistic chance at other schools in the area like NYU, Tuck, CBS, at Yale. Nationality, Canadian, isn't overrepresented in my group. GPA 7.5 out of 10. Undergrad in finance from a university in Ontario. Background, moved to Canada when 4, fluent in 3 languages. Some extracurriculars in there as well. Multiple times as a teaching assistant and marker for undergraduate courses. Now this is interesting here. Part of the Varsity Counter-Strike Go video game team, and that includes sponsors, a coach, official practice and math schedules, competed in official leagues with other universities from the US and Canada, and local and online tournaments. So pretty serious gaming there. Also a canvasser and branch coordinator for the government's annual charity campaign for the last 3 years. Now work experience, co-op program at university, 4 internships after at different federal government departments, including the one OP was hired at full-time after graduation and is still working. So that's 6 years total at matriculation with 1 promotion, and OP has 1 direct report. Let's analyze this profile.
So funny how candidate expectations vary. So our last profile had a 600 and what was it? 665? 665 GMAT and was asking about Harvard, Stanford. And this profile has a 725 and is considering what were the schools? NYU, Tuck, Columbia, and Yale. Yeah. Right. I love it. Okay. So let's get stuck in academics. And And I think that the key here is that 725 GMAT. OP rightly kind of makes the assumption that 625 I should be looking at M7, and that already kind of is a good idea. 725 is equivalent to about a 770 on the old test, and that would put OP firmly 20, 30, even 40 points above the averages for M7. So definitely they're going to look at OP's profile pretty much regardless of everything else. But let's talk about the academics. 7.5 undergrad, but it's 7.5 out of 10. I think we said it was a Canadian undergrad. Here we go. Undergrad in finance, tier 2 university in Ontario. Look, tier 2 uni in Ontario, it's not great. 7.5 is solid, but not great either. But again, with that GMAT, who cares? So OP is in a good spot academically. In terms of demographics, Canadian ORM, I think is fair to say. There is a Quebec angle here. And alors, bonjour le Québécois. Premièrement, juste pour dire oui, dire bonjour. On va faire ça en français un tout petit peu. Donc, c'est vraiment genre, t'es dans le groupe de overrepresented candidates. Mais si tu peux un peu jouer sur le thème, genre québécois, canadien, il n'y a pas beaucoup d'applications à ces universités de Québec. Ça va te faire c'est sûr. C'est sûr. Tu seras peut-être le seul. Genre, c'est super. OK. Back to English. I just needed to get that in. What I was basically saying is that Quebec is pretty underrepresented, like really quite underrepresented in B school land, and so that will help OP. Extracurriculars. I like the gaming to some extent. It's going to be really important that OP can bring out the team and leadership aspect of this gaming. Gaming itself, I mean, it's becoming more and more sort of credible and considered a sport, etc. But really, what the schools want to hear about here is the leadership and the teamwork involved in that extracurricular. And if you can do that, it could be very, very valuable. I also like this canvasser and branch coordinator angle, which is quite interesting, but I think could be perhaps seen as kind of an extension of OP's main job. I'm not sure. It's hard to know the nuance there, but there's certainly an overlap between those two. So I think the big extracurricular that sort of a value is that sport, the esports angle. Although it also does look like OP's not doing that anymore. So as I always say, extracurricular during work is a lot more unique than during undergrad. Everybody does some sort of extracurricular during undergrad. Doesn't count for that much. So on the extracurriculars. Now, professional. What I like about this is that it's public sector. I'm working with a public sector applicant at the moment, and it's sort of a reminder that it's quite unique and quite impactful work being done, and not something their schools see every day or see as many of. So I like the federal government experience. I assume that's Canadian federal government experience. 6 years of work experience, a little bit on the high end, particularly by the time OP applies and matriculates. It's at matriculation. Apologies. So 6 years of work experience is a little bit over the average, but absolutely fine. I like, promotion, direct report. These are both positives for OP, particularly that direct report. I would love, and we can talk about this later, but I'd love a leadership story that explains how OP kind of goes about that responsibility. In terms of goals, pivoting to investment banking in New York City. Now, I'm not in love with this goal. It's not entirely clear how OP has investment banking experience, right? We talked previously about people with a CFA, for example. We talked about people who are doing financial risk consulting. Those people obviously have the hard skills to pivot into investment banking if they wanted to. I'm not actually sure that OP has that same degree of financial pedigree. And I'm not sure, therefore, that is the right goal. There is an angle maybe on bringing, for example, infrastructure finance is an area of investment banking where OP's federal government work might have a connection to. So basically, there might be areas of investment banking, niche areas of investment banking that OP can focus on. That would be that would be a good thing, because at the moment, I'm not seeing OP as qualified for an investment banking MBA like pivot. TBD. Okay, good. So overall, solid. Depends a lot on the story.
Okay. OP has a few questions here. OP is looking for some honest thoughts on whether I now have a realistic chance at the other schools in the area, like NYU, Tuck, CBS, and Yale. Now that new GMAT's here.
Yeah, short answer is yes. Short answer is yes. Again, the goals possibly need to change, and the narrative explaining those goals needs quite a lot of work. But that's all stuff that you can do. That's absolutely you're not committed to any of that. I think that Cornell should still be on the list. It's a classic, not M7, but feeds into investment banking, is still Ivy League, etc. I definitely think that should still be on the list. But I also think that NYU, Tuck, CBS, Yale are certainly credible chances. And you know what? I would say with a 725, I think OP kick himself for not throwing in even higher applications out there. Wharton, Harvard, Stanford, why not? Give it a go. Biting off a lot more application work, coming up with an essay that's deep enough for what matters most for Stanford, for example. It's more work required. But just in terms of the schools that OP can look at, shoot for the top. Absolutely.
Okay. And just in terms of the narrative, so what kind of narrative would work best for someone with this profile?
I think the goals come first. So perhaps switching up those goals away from investment banking, or focusing on an area of investment banking that OP has a niche, like an angle on or experience with. That's the first part of the narrative. The other part is, I'm imagining an essay, maybe not part of the core career narrative, but it might be one of the other essays, for example, the Harvard leadership essay or a Kellogg mistake essay, for example. I'm imagining a story that links OP's gaming experience, which is interesting and unique if told in the right way, to this direct report that OP is managing. So, for example, opening the essay with a leadership lesson from gaming, and then talking about how that lesson applied to managing this direct report. For example, I learned to deliver feedback with a pinch of positivity. And now when I'm managing my report, I do the same thing. So that, I know that's not career narrative, but I'm certainly thinking that would be an interesting story to include. The actual career narrative itself, it needs to be, here's something I found interesting in my work. Here's how I can do that more impactfully at an investment bank or somewhere else. That's why my short-term goal is to pivot to a bulge bracket investment bank in New York City. My long-term goal is to tackle this particular theme more directly. Maybe it's back in the government, maybe it's in a regulatory role, maybe it's as an entrepreneur, an angel investor, and have a long-term goal that's a bit more lofty. And that's basically the OP's career narrative. And I think, great, in with a good chance.
Yeah. I think that's all for OP. We've covered everything. Should we move on to profile number 3?
Absolutely. Let's do it. Next profile.
Next profile. Now, lots of info in the header itself. Round 1, 2027. South Asia IB plus CFA plus founder. Odds at Stern, Columbia, and Darden. So some demographics: South Asian, 28 years old, applying in round 1, 2027, so a while from now, 4.5 years of work experience at matriculation. Academics, 3.2 GPA, non-US undergrad, also CFA charter holder, GMAT focus 685. Work experience now, OP is an investment banker, corporate investment banking at a large global bank in the South Asian market, fast promotion, also a founder of a transaction advisory / investment banking consulting firm focusing on the Bangladesh-China corridor. Partners include senior professionals, of which one is a Harvard Law alum. Post-MBA goals: investment banking in NYC, ideally coverage or M&A with emerging markets exposure, long-term cross-border advisory, or a principal investing platform linking South Asia with global capital. Target schools, like I mentioned, Stern, Columbia, Darden, also open to some more schools, as well as Stern part-time. if you think it would help balance risk. What do you think overall about OP's profile?
Okay. Let's dive in. Academics, right? 3.2. Not great. Non-US undergrad, so it doesn't. They're not going to have to report it, but so I assume. Basically, I'm assuming that is a self-converted score, and it's not on GPA, and it's not therefore reported. But if it is reported and it is on a GPA 4.0 scale, that's tough. All right, that's really not a great GPA at all. Average is 3.6 at top schools. CFA also does help a bit from a kind of convincing them that you can handle the quant side of the program, for sure. That certainly helps. And a 685, it's equivalent to about a 730 on the old test, which is bang on the school's average for the last few years for the M7s. So it's okay GMAT, not great GPA. That's not a great start. Demographics, South Asian, age 28. Now, my guess here is that OP is from Bangladesh, which I think is considered South Asia. Am I right? Yeah. So my guess is Bangladeshi. Now, let's be clear. If this was an Indian male, that would be a heavily overrepresented group. Bangladesh, a little bit less so, but still super, super competitive and overrepresented from a demographic perspective. Extracurriculars, not specified, I don't think. Now, on the one hand, it might just be that it was forgotten. On the other hand, it might be that OP is so busy with founding this project that they don't have any extracurriculars. Now, obviously, that would be an issue. So I'll hold fire on that one, but don't underestimate the importance of this OP. And if you're applying round 1 2027, then you have time to get involved in some as well. Particularly picking up some leadership responsibilities within those would be super, super valuable. One of the key gaps in the profile that I'm seeing right now. Okay, this investment banking and the professional experience generally is very, very strong. I think that's probably where OP stands out. Investment banking at a well-known bank, that's a great start. A fast promotion, they will also like that. And then this founding a transaction advisory IB consulting firm with a really nice little niche focus there. Some really good stories likely to come out of that. And I think, sets up both the long and the short-term goals very nicely. These are strong goals based on that professional experience. Investment banking in New York City, no reason why you're not underqualified for that from a professional perspective. And then long-term scale cross-border advisory, principal investing platform, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that looks like good long-term goals as well. In fact, those goals are so good that the school might even wonder why you need an MBA for those. And we can talk about that in a bit more detail because you're kind of positioned already to do that work. Okay. Overall, weak extracurriculars and academics, strong professional and goal. I'll jump into the first question. What are the chances at Stern, Columbia, Darden? I think T15 certainly strong, right? So the kind of Sterns and Dardens of the world. Columbia might be a stretch with that GPA and demographic, but still worth a shot, I think.
Okay. Any thoughts on scholarship chances, especially at Stern or Columbia?
Forget it.
Yeah.
OP, you're an overrepresented male applicant with investment banking experience. It's assumed you've earned your keep. Our colleague Alex Zarganis, who is a Columbia grad, he quipped in a recent interview. He said, "As far as I remember, there are no poor international students at Columbia." It makes sense, right? They're bringing people in to New York. They have their pick of thousands of applications around the world. Why are they going to pick someone who worked in investment banking, didn't save enough, and needs a scholarship? It's not going to happen. Forget about scholarships, OP. Think about self-funding this. If you get one, great, maybe, but don't rely on it.
Okay. And OP's GPA, like you mentioned, is a little low on the lower side. Does that CFA and GMAT score adequately offset it?
It does a little bit. Adequately is the key word there. And adequately, no. It's certainly, from an academic perspective, as I said earlier, academics are certainly the weak point in this profile. The CFA and the GMAT offset it a little bit. And actually, no, the GMAT doesn't offset it at all. The GMAT is actually below expectations for the demographic, right? It's in line for an M7. I mean, they have a 730 average. That's it. He's bang on that average. South Asian applicants are basically expected to have a GMAT above the school average. And so GMAT does not offset at all. The CFA does a little bit. The CFA shows that, rankings aside, OP is not going to struggle with the quant side of the quant part of the course. So it does a little bit, but no, academics are still weak.
Okay. All right. I think OP, we've answered all of your questions. Sam, are we ready to move on to the next one?
Cool. Just seeing these comments as well. This commenter seems to be sort of saying the same thing as me on scholarships. Don't bank on it. Okay, next profile then, shall we?
Next profile.
Cool.
So this one is a little bit different from our usual crop of Big Four consultants and investment bankers. Now, this is a humanities major transitioning to data science. So I did a bit of digging into this profile. Demographic not really specified in the post, but they are female and married. All right, so I feel like my profile isn't particularly special, and I'm quite intimidated by some of the profiles that are posted here.
Bit of imposter syndrome. Come on, we'll get over that.
Yeah. GPA 3.36 from a liberal arts college. Not a top one in the country, but decent. Had a few mental health issues in sophomore year, which is why they took a year off from school. But then the GPA, they pulled it right back up in the next year. Literature major, took few quant courses, bit of aimless path in my early 20s, and it took a while to get interested in business. But so it took a few years for them to break into marketing. And since then, they've made it to a senior associate role with one direct report. Career growth is there, but OP says it's nothing special. So OP also did apply to Darden's part-time MBA, had a great conversation with the Darden representative, but did not take the GMAT or the GRE because I wanted to prioritize applying earlier when there would be more space, though I'm wondering now if I should. So where does OP go from here? What do you think?
Yeah, okay. 3.3 academic first, 3.36. Meh. 3.6 average at top schools. That's not helping. OP sounds like, had issues and came back, bounced back. So I think a strong optional essay to explain the health issue will somewhat mitigate the GPA, but not entirely. Also, given the literature focus of undergrad, the schools are immediately going to be looking at for your GMAT quant, and they're going to be looking really, really hard. And guess what? They're not going to see a GMAT quant. This is an issue. So I think that's going to be the issue. I think OP should definitely. I'll just jump straight to it. OP should definitely be considering, or taking the GMAT for sure. If it doesn't go to plan, there are schools with waivers and things that OP can apply for. But just give yourself a shot, because the quant is really the question mark on your profile, and the good GMAT quant score will bring you up a huge step. As you said, female. I think it's fair to say US as well. So US female. So good, say underrepresented, but certainly supportive demographics there. Extracurriculars not mentioned. Maybe a pink flag, although it does sound like OP is the kind of person that has extracurriculars, has been involved in stuff. Not seeing what they are yet, so can't really comment on that. But OP, don't underestimate it. Okay, professional. A little bit. No, it's hard to explain this, hard to quantify this, but marketing is seen as a little bit less hardcore, with a little bit of skepticism compared to, for example, applicants from investment banking, from the Big Four consulting, etc., that we've talked about, who go through some really rigorous training, and they have very aggressive review cycles and whatever. Marketing is perceived as a little bit less white collar than that. And so OP, again, and anyone with a marketing background, really important that you can quantify your work. And the people within marketing, in my experience, tend to do best are people within programmatic marketing, right? Systems, KPIs, everything digital. Those people, because they can quantify their work, they tend to have a slight edge. But marketing on its own, a little bit wary. then, well, but with a promotion, right? And a direct report. So, or at least one promotion and a direct report. So that will certainly help for sure. In terms of goals, I'm not entirely clear where this data science thing comes from. I guess there's a story there, but I really don't know what it is. And without the story, it's really hard to gauge whether that is indeed a good goal. I am a little bit skeptical. Maybe OP talked about it with the Darden rep, in which case, okay, if they say it's good, then fine. But it wouldn't be the obvious narrative to go with in terms of goals. And I would say that if you're looking to take on a more quantitative role, I would try and keep that within the marketing sphere and use that, build a narrative around, look, I've done the soft side of marketing. Now I want to do the hardcore side. And for that, I need an MBA for the quant training. That kind of narrative would make a lot of sense. Anyway, goals aren't committed yet, so we can vary that. But yeah, not adding to the profile yet. So overall, like quite a lot of missing points in terms of the extracurriculars, the goals, the context, the narrative, but not the worst profile we've seen by a long shot.
Okay. OP has a few questions here. What type of program is feasible given my profile? OP already mentioned earlier that they know that they're not interested in MBB or finance, so they don't need a top 10 program. So do you recommend holding off an MBA so I can build my profile? And is a top 15 program even necessary for this type of transition?
Sheesh, necessary. Okay, let's try and break that down then. So the first thing is what kind of programs? Like I think if OP really does want to pivot into like the quant side of marketing, I'm imagining something like a tech MBA, a Cornell tech MBA, or the NYU Stern tech MBA. Now those are programs that would be absolutely ideal, I think, for what OP wants. And I say I think because it's not entirely clear what the goals are, but a tech focused program, probably, with a slightly lower bar, maybe in terms of the GMAT required, etc., might be right for OP. The key thing is going to be to signpost your interest in data science, right? It's all very well saying, oh, I took a few quant courses, didn't really know what I wanted to do, and now I think I know what I want to do. They're like, that's just you sound like a plastic bag blowing around in the wind and just sort of going in whatever direction the wind blows. I would say that things you can do to signpost your interest. Think quant courses, right? MBA math is the obvious one that people talk about. Coursera might have a course that helps you signpost what you want to do long term as well, and a really good story, right, that explains where this interest in the sort of quantitative data science side comes from. That will go a long way as well, and I'm not seeing that right now. Next, the other thing OP can really do is take the GMAT. I mean, I mentioned it a little bit before, but just to re-emphasize this, there's a big question mark over your quantability, especially if your goals are literally, I want to go into something more quanti. And especially if you're targeting top programs. Now, you might get away with a waiver from a sort of non-M7 school, but certainly if you're targeting the decent sort of T10, T15 schools, a strong GMAT is going to be really, really going to help you. And if you need to delay to round 2 for that, then so be it, right? Or even late next year, do it. Take that GMAT. I really would recommend it. And then in terms of, there's one other point that I wanted to make, Mal, and I'm not sure where this would fit into our conversation, so I'll just throw it in now. I had a wonderful conversation with an admissions rep. Now, admissions reps are salespeople, right? These are salespeople. Their job is to get as many applicants through the door as possible, or through the system as possible. Applicants pay $200 each in fees, right? The more applicants, the better the yield. And sorry, not the better the yield, the better the lower the offer rate, the better the program ranks. Admissions are incentivized in every way to get as many people to apply as possible. And so a wonderful conversation where they say, yeah, you should definitely apply. Take that with I was going to say a pinch, but more like a spoonful of salt. Because I don't think I can really think of any times where an adcom has said, no, you shouldn't apply to somebody and just given them a hard no. It doesn't happen because then it's not their incentive. By the way, very useful aspect of like reason why admissions consultants can provide an impartial third party view here. But anyway, so yeah, take that with a pinch of salt. Although, you know, if you love the program, you love the program, nothing wrong with that. But just be careful of what the adcoms say, particularly when they say, yeah, you should definitely apply, because yeah, that doesn't equate to an early offer. Okay, so off on my little rant now. Any other questions?
I think I've covered everything. OP's comment is interesting though. OP's the post hasn't gotten much traction. So OP was wondering, why hasn't this gotten any comments? Anything I
Yeah.
can do to help?
OP, you're missing quite a lot of information from there for that people need to make a proper judgment. You know, you haven't done your GMAT yet, you haven't got your extracurriculars in there, blah blah blah. There's a lot missing for us to really make a judgment. Hopefully today's been useful nonetheless, but yeah, that explains why people aren't really helping and why it had a 0 vote before we upvoted it as well. Also, because you also seem like a genuinely nice person, which means the trolls haven't got much to go on, and the trolls in the comments rinsing applicants don't have much to go on. So that's also partly why. Anyway, hopefully of some use. OP, get in touch if you would like to talk further. Cool. Next profile, Mal.
Next profile. All right. 328 unofficial GRE. I see a perfect quant and a 158 verbal. M7 applications for an MBA. So OP needs some advice. Indian male, 3 years of OKEX, 4 biomatriculation. Some key highlights: commerce graduate with an A+ grade, GPA not really specified here. An Indian chartered accountant ranked in the top 60 within India. And 3 years of articleship experience with EY India prior to appearing for their CA exams. 2 years, 3 months of post-qualification experience with a tier 2 consulting firm handling PE clients. Currently building and scaling a financial and startup advisory firm. Reached INR 1 million in revenue within 9 months of establishment, and has enough success stories to detail this out. Some extracurriculars in there as well: social work through organizational outreach programs, conducted and led official training sessions, member of the departmental L&D team. And in the comments, I think I also saw 2+ years of providing pro bono consultation for CA aspirants at all levels. So,
Okay.
yeah, what do you think about this profile overall?
Let's start with academics. Slightly mixed bag in terms of academics. Top 1% of the cohort. Is that in one of the comments somewhere? It says top 1% of the cohort, or is that?
So OP has 2 posts. This is OP's. I think he's the first one didn't get traction.
I see. So it's posted again.
Yeah, posted again. Same details, but slightly 1% in India, top 60 around the same.
Oh, I see. Okay, interesting. Okay, so I think like OP is obviously quite smart, but that 328 for the demographic, it's not ideal. It's not great. I mean, a perfect quant score is nice, but that verbal is not outstanding at all for the top programs. So I'm sort of a little bit cautious on academics. Not bad, certainly not bad, but maybe not quite as strong as OP thinks. I feel positive with my quant score, for example. Yeah, but you got a weak GMAT, weak verbal. GRE verbal. So not too sure about that. Okay. Oh, demographics. I think I'd like to coin a new acronym, Mal. ORMAF is our new acronym. Overrepresented, very overrepresented. Indian male applicant. Pro bono consulting and the social work on the extracurriculars down here. I think that's probably going to be quite strong, although we don't have a huge amount of details. It does look like it's post-undergrad social work and the training and stuff. So it does look like quite recent and quite strong extracurriculars. Professional. Not particularly sexy tier 2 consulting beforehand. 2 years, but I guess solid training, solid experience to then do what OP is now doing, which is a bit more interesting, which is financial and startup advisory, which seems to have been getting some traction in terms of revenue, which is really nice. So solid professional for sure. Now, goals. OP is, I believe, aiming for entrepreneurship. I get that from here as the goal. I'm not actually sure if this means consulting previously to entrepreneurship now, or whether there's any more information about goals that you've seen.
I haven't
No.
seen much
I think
yet.
it's fair to assume that entrepreneurship is the goal here, and I think that's right. I think OP's already got a business. I'm generally very wary of people saying I want to do entrepreneurship after the MBA because lots of them don't have any business experience, don't even necessarily have an idea, just like the idea of entrepreneurship. You people do not put entrepreneurship as your post MBA goal, please. But I think OP can. I think OP can. So I think those goals are solid and they are valid. So overall, solid professional, solid academics, but yeah, not the strongest profile either. So yeah, that's what I see.
A bit ambitious for GSB booth. That's OP's first question, actually. Do I have a shot at GSB or booth? I feel positive with my quant score and consulting entrepreneurship profile. Keep in mind, OP is taking the GRE again in about 2 weeks and is aiming for a higher score.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's assume everyone's aiming for a higher score. Let's assume on the current score, and if OP you get a higher score, then great. Add to this. But with a 328, I'm not enthusiastic about booth. About GSB. Look, I've worked with entrepreneurship applicants who've got into GSB. Right, we know what how high the bar is for those applicants, and to give you an idea of like kind of one that's fairly recent, had like $30 million Series B funding, Series C funding round. The bar is really, really high. Like the Y Combinator types, those are the people that are getting into Stanford as entrepreneurs. And I'm just not sure that OP's startup advisory firm is quite that caliber, quite so impactful. So I'm very hesitant on GSB. I really am. There's a lot of very successful startup founders applying to GSB, and I'm just not sure OP is gonna beat them. Certainly not with a 328 anyway. So that's on for GSB. I do think that Booth is doable though. Booth, and when I say Booth, I mean the rest of the M7s. I think everything from Wharton through Columbia, Kellogg, Booth, that sort of MIT, that bucket, there I think is OP's really bread and butter and where OP should be focusing. I don't think HBS and Booth, HBS and GSB are gonna see enough standout here. Maybe I'm wrong. It depends on what that startup advisory firm is doing, but it doesn't sound game changing. So that's my cautious stance.
And what kind of narrative do you think would work best for OP for an M7 application?
Yeah. One question that came up on my side was what's going to happen with this startup firm, the startup that you've founded when you go off to business school? If it's doing so well and it's growing so well, why are you leaving? And how are you going to keep it going while you're gone? Who are you going to hand it off to someone? That is one of the parts of the narrative that needs explaining. That's just a gap that just needs filling. That's one. The rest of the narrative, I think, really does hinge on what this startup is doing. And I'm imagining a narrative that starts with identifying a problem, right? A story that shows a particular problem, setting a mission statement of I'm going to tackle that problem in my career, and I'm already doing that with my startup advisory firm. Here are some results that we've reached, some of the impact we've already had. And then describe how in your short and long-term goals, you're going to build on that impact. Maybe it's go back to this startup advisory firm and scale, or open up a new international office or whatever. That is the next step. And then finally, why do you need an MBA for that? OP is already growing the startup. Why does OP need an MBA? there is a question mark there for sure. And don't just say the network and the piece of paper, right? I need certain classes. I want certain professors, leadership initiatives. Maybe OP's leadership needs some formal training because he's identified that that's the hardest part of growing the business. That kind of level of granularity is really what's needed here. And then go on to name specific classes and professors within each program in the application. So hopefully that covers the narrative. I do think that there is a interesting story buried among that stuff, but at the moment I'm not seeing it, so I'm being a little bit cautious.
Okay. I think that's all for OP.
Cool.
Should we move on to ask
Move on to our last profile. Cool. Now this one is a photo because OP sent us a message, got in touch directly, and just if you'd like, I'll read through it because I'm not sure you're going to be able to read it. Can you see it clearly on the screen share?
I can.
Okay. Go on, you go for it then.
All right. Okay, hi. I'm 25, graduated from an Ivy League school with a degree in pol science, and currently working at a law firm as a law clerk, conflicts analyst after a year at a non-profit. Now you asked for some more details about OP's profile. GPA 3.86, extracurriculars, editor-in-chief of some minor science journals and mentor for high school students. Post MBA, OP wants to get into product management or strategy or learning development programs, leadership development programs, unsure exactly, but wants to avoid PE and IP. There are 3 years of work experience, some gaps in between to study for the LSAT, 5 years at a lobbying government firm as an intern, then 1.5 years at a health nonprofit, and like OP said earlier, 1 year as a law clerk, conflicts analyst.
Cool. I think that's 0.5 years at the lobbying government firm. So I think we're talking about 3 years total work ex, which is valid. Okay, let's go into this in a bit of detail then. So first, academic, right? 3.86 on a 4.0 GPA from an Ivy League school. Very, very strong in political science, I believe. Very, very strong academics. No GMAT yet, but certainly on the right track. Demographic, look, I'm assuming American. I don't think we have any more information than that, but just possibly. It doesn't sound like demographics going to be an issue. Extracurriculars, editor-in-chief of science journals, editor-in-chief of some minor science journals. It's quite interesting. Again, maybe a teamwork angle you can build on there, OP. It's not rock star stuff in terms of leadership, but it might give you some solid teamwork stories, some solid mentorship stories, for example, that you can build on. That's nice. Right, professional. So 3 years of work experience in total. It's slightly on the shorter side. That's not necessarily a problem, but it's going to be younger applicants often struggle to demonstrate leadership experience. And so that's sort of why that could perhaps be an issue. Within that, a year at a non-profit, 0.5 years at a lobbying government firm as an intern. So quite interesting internship, actually. 1.5 years at a health non-profit, also quite interesting. And then a year as a law clerk. And I think overall, look, if I was a job recruiter, I would look at that and I'd say you've never done more than 2 years in any one role or any one thing, which is a little bit wary. I would also say that it will depend on the brands of those firms, which we don't yet know. The lobbying, for example, is that a well-known brand? The law firm that you're a law clerk at, is that well known? So just branding. The health nonprofit, is that well known? The element of branding we don't know here, but if those are big brands, that will certainly help the experience. And maybe OP, either in their career narrative or their optional essay, wants to allude to why they've been sort of moving around a bit. Okay, X the internship from that, but still only 1.5 years at the health nonprofit. Why did you leave? Why did you make that pivot? Okay, in terms of goals, I like that OP is really open-minded. I think, what was it here? Post-MBA, product management, strategy, LDP, very, very, very broad. We're going to need to bring them together and narrow that down a little bit. But you're on the right track, and nothing wrong with avoiding a PEIB. Rule that out. That's absolutely fine. Focus on one of the others, but you will want to narrow it down. And for that, I'd encourage you to think about where do you have the most credible experience. Maybe it's that you've moved around a lot and you like moving around and you did that deliberately, and that's why you want to apply to a leadership development program where you'll continue bouncing around. Maybe it's strategy because you've seen lots of different aspects, both nonprofits and government and law and whatever, and you want to bring all that together and create strategy for a particular company. There's lots of different ways you could spin this, but yeah, narrow it down and the goals will be just fine. So, okay, overall, a strong profile. Maybe in a year or so, it would be even stronger, but certainly I think a strong profile already.
Okay. I see a question OP had. Is an MBA at a top school feasible at the moment, or should I try to pivot into the business world a bit more before applying?
Yeah, look, it's not so much about pivoting into the business world, so to speak. Yeah, for example, we have military applicants who are transitioning to using business school as the transition into the business world, as you call it. There's nothing wrong with using business school as that pivot. You don't need to start making that pivot already necessarily, and that applies to everybody across a range of non-traditional backgrounds. By all means, use business school as the means for your pivot. That's absolutely fine. But what I would say is that if OP is asking, should I wait a little bit more before applying, then maybe. OP is 3 years of work experience. It's on the lower side. If there was something really impactful OP could do for another year, that wouldn't be a bad idea, I think. And to really something that maybe brings together all of this scattered experience, that wouldn't be a bad idea at all. So basically, I'm saying might be an idea to delay from a career progression perspective, but not necessarily, you don't have to do that to get into the business world. You can use the MBA for that.
Okay. Any other advice you would like to give, OP?
Yeah, GMAT. We're seeing no signs of the GMAT. I think there was a sign of the LSAT. Right. So OP, you're not going to have any issues with the verbal side of the GMAT at all. The quant side might be a bit more challenging. You might need some work. The difference, as far as I'm aware, between the LSAT and the GMAT, a big one is that the LSAT, every time you take the test again, it averages your score. It adds a new score and it averages everything you've taken so far. GMAT doesn't do that. GMAT, they only use your highest score, so that should take a little bit of the pressure off. If you've studied for the LSAT, I think the GMAT might be a little bit less stressful for you. I can't say I haven't taken the LSAT before, but that's my understanding. So that would be the first thing. Take the GMAT for sure. I think you're going to crush the verbal side. In terms of where to aim, I would say that, look, your academics are already strong. Ivy League 3.86. No one's questioning your academic ability. This is really for rankings. And given that you have the verbal side in the bag already, I would say I think anything below the school's average, you'd be letting yourself down. So like a 685 GMAT or a 328, 329 kind of GRE, anything below that, I think you'd be shooting yourself in the foot a little bit. But it shouldn't be too difficult for you to get above that, given your mother tongue and your strong academic abilities and your LSAT, etc. So that would be the next thing to do, is do the GMAT. Get leadership experience. Now, as far as I'm seeing, it's a pretty brief message, but I'm not seeing much in the way of leadership experience. For example, OP doesn't talk about managing anybody or anything like that. And the editor-in-chief might have some leadership experience, but might not, and it might not be very substantial. So one other thing you could do if you're going to delay your app is to get some leadership experience at an extracurricular where you could really create some new material, some good material for your stories. And then the other thing you want to do is start narrowing down those goals. Start thinking really seriously about what you enjoy. Consider speaking to people in your target roles. This is one of the really kind of compelling reasons for hiring an admissions consultant as well, to help you narrow down this experience. Someone who's already got an MBA, maybe someone who's had experience in one of these sectors. So start narrowing this down and explain really where you're strong, because schools are, especially this year, laser focused on who is going to be able to get a job after the MBA and who's going to be unemployed, or who's going to be disappointed because their goals were over here and their experiences over here and they can't make that leap. So really, really important that you get those goals well figured out. But overall, look, a strong profile, some very clear next steps. And yeah, OP, if you'd like to chat, get in touch.
Okay. I think that's all of our profiles and our special request for the day. Shall we move on to a bonus-worthy
Ah,
dilemma?
let's do it.
Is MBB worth giving up MBA sponsorship? Now, okay. Quick read here. I came into B School sponsored by a consulting firm, a non-MBB consulting firm, covers tuition plus a return bonus, which takes a lot of the financial pressure off. Probably make about 175 to 185K base when I return. At the same time, OP is targeting MBBs.
Or
Can't
considering
ignore the pull.
targeting MBBs.
Yeah, considering targeting MBBs. Can't ignore the pull of MBB. It's a stronger brand, alumni networks, and more attractive exits. But the trade-off is walking away from that 6 figures of sponsorship money. So OP says plenty of people in their class came in with 2-year sponsorships, especially from Asia. And they're pretty adamant about going back. And OP's even seen some MBB MBAs with sponsorship too, but they look like they're in dual degree programs mostly. So OP's really just trying to get a feel for whether the long-term upside of MBB actually outweighs the financial and career stability that comes with sticking to sponsorship. What do you think?
I absolutely love this question. What a difficult decision that is, right? That's a nice one to discuss. All right, on the one hand, the MBB taking the MBB offer, or pursuing an MBB offer, great exposure from an MBB. Your clients will be C-suite, really, at impactful companies, really kind of you'll be really up there making a difference in the world, or certainly advising companies that are making a difference in the world. Question mark, are you getting that already? Right? OP's solid platform and good client work might already be getting that exposure already. So I think a lot of that comparison comes down to where is OP right now, or at least where will OP be after the MBA at that firm, versus the exposure they would get in an MBB. It might be quite different, or it might be not that different. Hard to say. But it's certainly something that is going to be a strong point for the MBB, if you were to get an MBB offer. I have a general rule of thumb, though, that going into something purely for the exit opportunities of that thing is generally not a great idea. People often end up very disappointed. For example, I want to go into business school just so that I can pivot into a particular role, completely ignoring the personal benefits of an MBA is a really classic mistake people make. Seeing the MBA really transactionally and really discounting the personal growth that comes from it, that is just generally not a great approach to take. The most successful MBA applications I come across are from people who are saying, I really love time out from work. I want to build myself, and hopefully I will end up in this great afterwards. But there's also that personal side. And so taking something on just for the exit opportunities, like joining MBB just so that you can leave in a better place, not always the best approach. But also you'll get absolutely beasted, right? Let's just be clear about this. They are going to work you very, very hard. OP doesn't talk about the workload at the moment with current role, but I would suspect it probably won't be quite as intense. On the sponsorship side, look, having financial visibility of a guaranteed job after graduating, guarantee not having any debt, that allows you to make some pretty big life plans, not to mention financial investments. $250,000 invested in, what's that, at 5%? My GMAT quant is a bit rusty now, but if I get 5% for $250,000, that's $12,500 a year on a 5% return. If you were to just jam that in a money market fund, like that, having that financial flexibility is a really, really compelling point. And then the other thing is, like, why not take go back to your current company, work off the 2 years or whatever it takes, and then apply to MBB. Right? Then you've got no debt. You've built yourself a nice financial cushion, and then apply to MBB with a little bit more experience. You've still got the MBA. At that point, you might even be able to leverage the resources, the careers resources at the business school you were at, right? For example, to get introductions to the MBB in 2 years' time. So my summary here, Mal, is I think you'd be an idiot to walk away from that offer. full-time, great offer, great return offer that's paying for your B school, just for the sort of, for the grass that's greener over there. Idiot move.
And I think the comments agree with you.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What are the comments saying? Worst job market in 20 years. MBB is good, no doubt, but turn down MBA sponsorship for that, definitely not worth it. Yeah.
What's the saying? A bird in hand is worth two in the bush.
Two in the nest. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, OP has that offer anyway, right? So if they don't get if they go through the MBB recruiting and they don't get the offer, then they're fine. They've not lost anything. They just go to their original plan. The question is, should they spend their MBA doing their MBB recruitment? I don't know. Even if you did get the offer, I'm not sure you should take it. Unless you can get McKinsey or MBB to give you a bonus that pays for your MBA. That's not unheard of. To have it back, especially back in when the tech market was hot, to have post MBA recruiters paying for your MBA or paying off your MBA debt or paying back your sponsorship company directly. That used to happen. Don't think it happens quite so much anymore, and certainly not in the MBB world that I'm aware of. But I mean, that's maybe it. Maybe the best outcome is to get an offer from an MBB and then try and negotiate for them to pay back your old employer. It does happen, or it has happened. It's going to be a tough sell, though.
Okay. I think that's everything for today, Sam.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Well, great set of profiles, Mal. Thank you very much for digging all of them out, scrolling through the trolls of Reddit to unearth these gems. Really, really nice work. And yeah, look forward to seeing you next week for another roast.
See you next week then.
Roast you later. See ya.
Right.